What if everything you've been told about attracting women is wrong? What if the more you try to impress, chase, or convince someone to like you, the less attractive you actually become? In his groundbreaking book, Models, Attract Women Through Honesty, Mark Manson challenges traditional dating advice and reveals a powerful truth. Genuine attraction comes from authenticity, confidence, and emotional honesty, not manipulation or clever tricks. In this audiobook summary, you will discover why neediness destroys attraction, how vulnerability creates deeper connections, and what truly makes someone attractive in the long run. If you've ever struggled with confidence, relationships, or understanding attraction, this summary is for you. Stay until the end, because the lessons in this book have the potential to transform not only your dating life, but also the way you see yourself and interact with the world. Chapter 1. What Attract Women? Begins by challenging one of the most common beliefs many men have, that attraction is primarily about looks, money, status, or using the right lines. Mark Manson argues that while these factors can influence first impressions, they are not what create genuine, lasting attraction. Instead, women are often drawn to men who are comfortable with themselves, emotionally secure, and able to express who they truly are without constantly seeking approval. Imagine two men entering a social gathering. One spends the entire evening trying to impress everyone, carefully choosing every word and worrying about what others think. The other is relaxed, authentic, and comfortable expressing his opinions, even if not everyone agrees with him. According to the book, the second man is often perceived as more attractive because he demonstrates confidence and self-respect rather than neediness. Manson explains that attraction is not something you can force or negotiate. You cannot convince someone to be attracted to you through logic, gifts, or endless effort. Genuine attraction happens naturally when people sense authenticity and emotional strength. Think about a friend you've met who immediately seemed interesting and trustworthy, not because they were perfect, but because they appeared genuine. The same principle applies to romantic attraction. When people stop performing and start being themselves, they become more magnetic. The author also points out that many people unknowingly sabotage their attractiveness by constantly seeking validation. For example, someone may text repeatedly after not receiving a response, hoping for reassurance, but this behavior often communicates insecurity rather than confidence. One of the most powerful ideas in this chapter is that improving your attractiveness begins with improving your relationship with yourself. Instead of asking, how can I get people to like me? The better question is, how can I become someone I genuinely respect? This shift changes everything. Rather than chasing approval, you focus on building fulfilling life, pursuing meaningful goals, developing hobbies, improving your health, and strengthening your character. As a result, attraction becomes a byproduct of personal growth rather than the sole objective. As you reflect on this chapter, ask yourself, how often do I change my behavior just to gain approval from others? Am I trying to impress people, or am I showing them who I really am? What areas of my life could I improve for my own satisfaction rather than for external validation? These questions can reveal whether your actions are driven by confidence or by the fear of rejection. Main points. Attraction is not primarily created through looks, money, or clever techniques, but through authenticity and emotional confidence. People are naturally drawn to individuals who are comfortable being themselves. Seeking constant approval often decreases attractiveness because it signals insecurity. Focus on building a life you are proud of instead of trying to earn validation from others. A practical lesson you can apply immediately is to stop editing your personality to please everyone and start expressing your genuine thoughts and interests respectfully. The more you develop self-respect, pursue meaningful goals, and become comfortable with who you are, the more naturally attractive you become to others. Chapter 2, True Confidence, tackles one of the biggest misconceptions people have about confidence. Most people believe confidence is something you're born with or something that magically appears after achieving success, gaining status, or receiving approval from others. Mark Manson argues the opposite. True confidence is not the absence of fear, anxiety, or self-doubt. It is a willingness to take action despite those feelings. In other words, confidence is not a prerequisite for action. It is a result of action. This idea completely changes how many people approach personal growth and relationships. Imagine a young man who wants to talk to someone he finds attractive. He keeps telling himself that he'll approach her once he feels confident enough. Days turn into weeks, and weeks turn into months, but that magical feeling of confidence never arrives. Meanwhile, another person feels just as nervous but decides to start a conversation anyway. The interaction may not be perfect, and rejection is still possible, but every attempt teaches valuable lessons and builds resilience. Over time, the second person naturally becomes more confident because he has proven to himself that he can handle uncertainty. According to Manson, this is how genuine confidence is built, not by waiting for fear to disappear, but by repeatedly facing it. The chapter also explains that many people unknowingly place their self-worth in the hands of others. They feel good when they receive compliments and feel terrible when they face criticism or rejection. This creates fragile confidence because it depends on circumstances that are outside their control. True confidence comes from trusting yourself regardless of the outcome. Think of an entrepreneur who launches a business knowing it might fail, or an athlete who enters a competition despite the possibility of losing. Their confidence doesn't come from guaranteed success. It comes from knowing they can learn, adapt, and move forward no matter what happens. Manson emphasizes that failure is not the enemy of confidence. In fact, failure is often the source of confidence. Every challenge you survive becomes evidence that you are stronger and more capable than you once believed. Consider someone learning to drive. During the first few lessons, every turn feels stressful and every mistake feels significant. But after months of practice, driving becomes second nature. Confidence wasn't created by positive thinking alone. It was created through repeated experience and overcoming mistakes. As you listen to this chapter, ask yourself, what opportunities am I avoiding because I'm waiting to feel confident first? How often do I let the fear of failure stop me from taking action? Am I building confidence through experience, or am I hoping confidence will arrive before I begin? These questions can reveal the hidden barriers preventing growth in many areas of life. Main points. True confidence is not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite fear. Confidence is built through action, experience, and overcoming challenges rather than through positive thinking alone. Seeking validation from others creates fragile confidence, while trusting yourself creates lasting confidence. Failure is not something to avoid. It is often the very thing that builds resilience and self-belief. A practical lesson you can apply immediately is to identify one situation you've been avoiding because of fear or self-doubt and take a small action toward it today. Whether it's starting a conversation, sharing an idea, applying for an opportunity, or learning a new skill, confidence grows when you prove to yourself that you can face uncertainty and keep moving forward. Chapter 3. Power in Vulnerability introduces an idea that many people initially find uncomfortable. The traits we often try hardest to hide are sometimes the very things that help us build deeper and more meaningful connections. Mark Manson argues that most people spend a significant portion of their lives creating a carefully managed image, trying to appear perfect, successful, confident, and unaffected by criticism. The problem is that this constant performance creates distance between people. When someone is always trying to look flawless, others never get to know the real person behind the mask. Vulnerability, on the other hand, is a willingness to be honest about your thoughts, feelings, insecurities, and intentions, even when there's a risk of rejection or judgment. Imagine two people on a first date. One spends the entire evening trying to impress the other, only sharing stories that make them look successful and avoiding anything that could reveal weakness. The conversation feels polished but distant. The second person is confident enough to admit nervousness, talk honestly about challenges they face, and share genuine opinions without pretending to be someone they are not. Surprisingly, the second conversation often feels more engaging and memorable because authenticity creates trust. People connect with real human experiences, not carefully manufactured perfection. Manson explains that vulnerability is frequently misunderstood as weakness, but in reality, it requires courage. Anyone can hide behind a mask, avoid risks, and protect themselves from rejection. It takes far more strength to express genuine feelings while accepting that not everyone will respond positively. Consider a person who admits they are interested in someone instead of hiding their intentions behind endless games and mixed signals. They may face rejection, but they also gain clarity and self-respect. By being honest, they stop wasting energy trying to control how others perceive them. The chapter also highlights how fear of rejection often controls people's behavior without them realizing it. Many individuals avoid expressing opinions, pursuing opportunities, or showing affection because they fear negative outcomes. Yet every time someone suppresses their true self to avoid rejection, they sacrifice authenticity. Over time, this creates frustration and emotional exhaustion. Vulnerability breaks this cycle by encouraging people to accept that rejection is a normal part of life rather than something to fear. The goal is not to make everyone like you. The goal is to allow the right people to genuinely know you. Think about your own life for a moment. Have you ever pretended to agree with others just to avoid conflict? Have you hidden your interests, feelings, or ambitions because you worried about being judged? Have you delayed expressing your intentions because you feared rejection? These questions reveal areas where vulnerability may be missing. The irony is that the more comfortable you become with being yourself, flaws and all, the more attractive and relatable you often become. Main point: vulnerability is not weakness. It is a courage to be authentic despite the possibility of rejection. Genuine connections are built when people reveal their true thoughts, feelings, and intentions instead of trying to appear perfect. Hiding behind a carefully constructed image may protect you from criticism, but it also prevents meaningful relationships from forming. A practical lesson from this chapter is to practice small acts of honesty in your daily life, whether it's expressing a genuine opinion, admitting a mistake, sharing a personal challenge, or communicating your intentions clearly. Ask yourself regularly, am I showing people who I really am, or am I showing them who I think they want me to be? The more comfortable you become with authenticity, the stronger your relationships and self-confidence will become. Chapter 4, The Gift of Truth, explores one of the most powerful yet challenging principles in the entire book. Honesty is not just a moral virtue, it is a practical advantage in building meaningful relationships. Mark Manson argues that many people spend enormous amounts of time managing impressions, hiding flaws, exaggerating strengths, and telling small lies to appear more attractive. While these strategies may create short-term success, they often lead to long-term problems because relationships built on false images eventually collide with reality. The author suggests that truth is a gift because it frees both you and others from confusion, uncertainty, and unrealistic expectations. Imagine a man who is passionate about video games, books, and creative projects, but whenever he meets someone new, he pretends to enjoy activities he doesn't actually care about because he thinks they will make him seem more attractive. At first, this approach might help him gain approval, but maintaining this false image becomes exhausting. Eventually, his true interests emerge, and the connection begins to feel dishonest. Now imagine another person who openly shares his genuine interests from the beginning. Some people may not connect with him, but those who do are connecting with a real person rather than a carefully constructed character. This is the power of truth. It may reduce the number of people who are interested, but it dramatically increases the quality of the connections you create. Manson explains that many people fear honesty because they believe it will lead to rejection. Ironically, avoiding the truth often creates even greater problems. Consider someone who enters a relationship while hiding their intentions. They may pretend they want something casual when they actually desire commitment, or vice versa. Over time, misunderstandings grow, expectations clash, and both people end up frustrated. By being honest early, even if it feels uncomfortable, people can avoid wasting months or even years pursuing incompatible relationships. The truth may hurt in the short term, but deception usually hurts much more in the long term. The chapter also teaches that honesty must begin with self-honesty. Before you can be truthful with others, you must be willing to face uncomfortable truths about yourself. Maybe you seek validation more than you realize. Maybe you're avoiding difficult conversations. Maybe you're blaming circumstances for problems that require personal responsibility. True growth starts when you stop creating excuses and start looking at yourself objectively. This process can feel uncomfortable, but it is also incredibly liberating because you can only improve what you are willing to acknowledge. Think about your own life. Are there areas where you're pretending to be someone you're not? Are you hiding your true opinions, interests, or intentions because you're afraid of losing approval? Have you ever stayed silent when honesty could have prevented confusion or conflict? These questions encourage deeper self-awareness and help identify places where greater authenticity could improve your relationships and overall well-being. Main points. The central lesson of this chapter is that truth creates freedom, clarity, and stronger relationships. While dishonesty and impression management may provide temporary advantages, they often lead to misunderstandings and disappointment. Being honest about your interests, intentions, values, and emotions allows people to connect with the real you. Self-honesty is equally important because personal growth begins when you acknowledge reality instead of avoiding it. A practical lesson you can apply today is to identify one area of your life where you have been withholding the truth, either from yourself or from others, and take a small step toward greater honesty. Ask yourself, what truth am I avoiding? What would change if I expressed myself more openly? The more truth you bring into your life, the less energy you waste maintaining false images, and the more genuine your relationships become. Chapter 5. Polarization introduces a counterintuitive idea that many people initially resist. Trying to be liked by everyone often makes you less attractive to anyone. Mark Manson explains that many people go through life carefully filtering their opinions, interests, and personalities in an attempt to avoid rejection. They become social chameleons, constantly adapting themselves to fit the expectations of others. While this strategy may reduce conflict, it also makes them forgettable because there is nothing distinct or authentic about them. Polarization means being willing to express your true personality, values, preferences, and beliefs, even when doing so causes some people to disagree with you or lose interest. Imagine two YouTube creators. One tries to make content that appeals to absolutely everyone, avoiding strong opinions and playing everything safe. The other creator has a unique style, shares genuine viewpoints, and focuses on topics they are passionate about. The first creator may avoid criticism, but the second creator often develops a much stronger and more loyal audience. Why? Because people connect with authenticity. The same principle applies to relationships. When you express who you truly are, some people will naturally be drawn to you while others will not. That isn't a problem. It's actually the goal. Manson argues that attraction is not about maximizing approval. It is about finding compatibility. Think about someone who loves adventure, travel, and spontaneous experiences. If they pretend to be reserved and cautious just to impress someone, they may initially gain approval, but eventually the mismatch will create tension. On the other hand, if they openly express who they are from the beginning, they may turn away some people, but they will attract those who genuinely appreciate their personality. Polarization acts like a filter, helping compatible people find each other while naturally separating incompatible matches. The chapter also addresses one of the biggest fears people have: rejection. Most individuals spend enormous amounts of energy trying to avoid rejection, but Manson suggests that rejection is not always a negative outcome. Sometimes rejection is simply information. It reveals that two people may not be a good fit, saving both of them time, energy, and emotional investment. Consider someone who hides their opinion for months in a relationship only to discover later that they are fundamentally incompatible with their partner. A little honest polarization early on could have prevented a great deal of frustration. This lesson extends far beyond dating. In friendships, careers, business, and creative pursuits, people often suppress part of themselves to gain approval. Yet the people who tend to have the strongest relationships and greatest influence are often those who are comfortable standing out. They understand that authenticity naturally creates both attraction and rejection, and they are willing to accept both outcomes. As you reflect on this chapter, ask yourself, am I trying too hard to make everyone like me? What parts of my personality do I hide because I'm afraid of judgment? Are there opinions, interests, or goals that I keep secret to avoid rejection? What would happen if I became more comfortable expressing my authentic self? These questions can reveal whether you are living according to your own values or constantly adjusting yourself to meet the expectations of others. Main points. The central lesson of polarization is that authenticity naturally attracts some people while pushing others away, and that is exactly how healthy relationships are formed. Trying to please everyone often results in becoming less memorable, less attractive, and less fulfilled. Rejection should not always be viewed as failure. It is often valuable feedback that helps identify compatibility. A practical lesson from this chapter is to start expressing your genuine interests, opinions, and personality traits more openly instead of constantly seeking approval. Whether it's sharing your true hobbies, speaking honestly about your values, or pursuing goals that matter to you, each act of authenticity strengthens your self-respect and helps you attract people who appreciate the real you. Ask yourself regularly, am I being accepted for who I truly am, or for a version of myself that I created to please others? The answer may reveal where your greatest opportunities for growth lie. Chapter 6, Rejection and Success, addresses one of the greatest fears that holds people back in relationships and in life, the fear of hearing no. Mark Manson argues that most people view rejection as proof that something is wrong with them, but this mindset creates unnecessary suffering and prevents growth. According to the book, rejection is not a verdict on your worth as a person. It is simply a natural part of human interaction and an unavoidable part of pursuing anything meaningful. In fact, one of the strongest indicators of future success is not how often you succeed, but how willing you are to face rejection and keep moving forward. Imagine a young entrepreneur launching a new business. The first customers aren't interested, investors decline meetings, and early products fail to gain traction. If that entrepreneur interprets every rejection as a sign of personal inadequacy, they'll likely quit. But if they view rejection as feedback and part of the process, they can learn, improve, and eventually succeed. The same principle applies to relationships. Someone who never risks rejection may avoid temporary discomfort, but they also miss opportunities for meaningful connection. Someone willing to be honest about their interests and accept whatever response they receive gains experience, confidence, and clarity. Manson explains that many people become trapped in what he calls an avoidance mindset. Instead of pursuing what they want, they spend their energy trying to avoid embarrassment, disappointment, or failure. Ironically, this strategy often produces the very loneliness and frustration they hope to avoid. Consider a person who sees someone they would love to meet but decides not to start a conversation because they are afraid of being rejected. Years later, they may not remember the potential rejection, but they often remember the opportunities they never pursued. Regret tends to come more from inaction than from failed attempts. One of the most powerful insights in this chapter is that rejection often provides valuable information. Not every person is meant to connect with every other person. Differences in values, goals, lifestyles, personalities, and preferences naturally create incompatibilities. Rather than seeing rejection as a personal attack, Manson encourages readers to view it as a filtering process. Just as a job applicant may not be the right fit for every company, two people may simply not be the right fit for each other. Understanding this helps remove much of the emotional weight attached to rejection. The chapter also reveals a surprising truth. People who appear confident are not necessarily rejected less often. They simply recover from rejection faster because they don't allow it to define their identity. They understand that one person's opinion does not determine their value. This mindset creates freedom. When you're no longer obsessed with avoiding rejection, you become more authentic, more courageous, and ultimately more attractive because you're acting from self-respect rather than fear. Take a moment to reflect on your own experiences. How many opportunities have you avoided because you feared rejection? Do you see rejection as a personal failure or as useful feedback? Are you protecting yourself from temporary discomfort at the cost of long-term growth? What goals, conversations, or relationships might become possible if you stop treating rejection as something catastrophic? These questions can help uncover the hidden ways fear may be limiting your life. Main points. The core lesson of this chapter is that rejection is not the opposite of success. It is often a necessary part of success. Rejection does not determine your worth as a person, and avoiding rejection usually leads to missed opportunities and regret. Every rejection provides information, experience, and a chance to build resilience. The most successful and confident people are not those who never fail, but those who continue taking action despite failure. A practical lesson you can apply today is to identify one situation where fear of rejection has been holding you back and take a small step forward, whether it's starting a conversation, sharing an idea, applying for an opportunity, or expressing your intentions honestly. Ask yourself, what would I do if I weren't afraid of rejection? The answer may point directly toward your next stage of growth and success. Chapter 7, The Three Fundamentals, brings together the core ideas of attraction into a simple but powerful framework that explains why some people naturally develop strong, meaningful connections while others struggle despite trying hard. Mark Manson breaks attraction down into three essential pillars: confidence, honesty, and non-neediness. He argues that most people overcomplicate relationships by focusing on techniques, lines, or strategies, when in reality attraction is shaped far more by who you are and how you carry yourself in anything you say. Imagine two people in the same social situation. One is constantly trying to be interesting, carefully monitoring how others respond, and adjusting their behavior to gain approval. The other is relaxed, speaks honestly, and is not afraid to express disagreement or personal opinions, even if they are not universally liked. The second person tend to stand out not because they are trying harder, but because they are not trying to be anything other than themselves. This combination of confidence, Honesty and emotional independence creates a natural sense of attraction because it signals stability and self-respect. Manson explains that confidence without honesty can become arrogance or manipulation, while honesty without confidence can feel weak or uncertain. Similarly, both confidence and honesty lose their power if a person is still deeply dependent on others for validation. This is where non-neediness becomes critical. Neediness is a hidden behavior of constantly seeking approval, reassurance, or emotional validation from others. For example, someone who repeatedly checks their phone waiting for replies or overanalyzes every message they send is acting from neediness. On the other hand, someone who is comfortable with silence, uncertainty, and independent emotional stability naturally appears more grounded and attractive. The chapter highlights how these three fundamentals work together in real life. Consider someone starting a new job. If they are confident, they contribute ideas without fear. If they are honest, they communicate clearly and authentically instead of pretending to know everything. If they are non-needy, they do not obsess over constant approval from co-workers or superiors. As a result, they are often perceived as more capable and trustworthy, not because they are perfect, but because they are secure in themselves. The same principle applies to friendships and romantic relationships, where people are drawn to those who are authentic, self-assured, and not dependent on external validation for their sense of worth. Manson emphasizes that these fundamentals are not about manipulating others, but about developing internal stability. When a person becomes comfortable with who they are, they stop relying on external reactions to define their value. This shift changes everything. Instead of entering interactions hoping to be liked, they enter simply to express themselves and see what happens. Ironically, this often leads to stronger attraction because people are naturally drawn to individuals who are not desperately trying to be liked. As you reflect on this chapter, ask yourself, am I trying to be liked more than I am trying to be myself? Do I rely on others' responses to feel good about my worth? Where in my life do I act out of neediness instead of confidence? How would my relationships change if I stopped seeking approval and started focusing on authenticity? These questions can reveal how closely your current behavior aligns with the three fundamentals. Main points. The three fundamentals of attraction are confidence, honesty, and non-neediness, and they must work together to create genuine connection. Confidence allows you to act without fear, honesty ensures authenticity, and non-neediness removes dependence on external validation. Together, they create a stable and attractive presence that naturally draws people in. A practical lesson you can apply immediately is to observe your behavior in social situations and identify moments where you seek approval or adjust your personality unnecessarily. Practice expressing your true thoughts more openly. Reduce overthinking about how others perceive you, and focus on being comfortable with uncertainty in interactions. Ask yourself regularly, am I acting from self-respect or from a need for validation? The more you align your behavior with these three fundamentals, the more natural and effortless your relationships will become. Chapter 8. Demographics. Shifts the focus from mindset and behavior to something many people completely overlook when thinking about attraction, timing, environment, and life circumstances. Mark Manson explains that while confidence, honesty, and emotional health matter, they do not exist in isolation. The people you meet, the opportunities available to you, and even the social environment you are part of can dramatically influence your chances of forming meaningful connections. In simple terms, attraction is not only about who you are, but also about where you are and who is around you. Imagine someone who is highly confident, honest, and emotionally secure, but lives in a small town where they rarely meet new people and social opportunities are limited. Now compare them with someone who may not be extraordinary in personality but lives in a large city, frequently attends social events, and interacts with diverse groups of people. Over time, the second person is statistically more likely to form romantic connections simply because their environment provides more opportunities. Manson uses this idea to show that many people wrongly blame themselves for lack of success in relationships when, in reality, their surroundings may be limiting their chances far more than their personality is. The chapter also highlights how people often ignore the role of compatibility based on demographics such as age, interests, lifestyle, values, and social circles. For example, someone who is passionate about fitness, travel, and entrepreneurship may struggle to connect deeply in a group where most people prefer completely different lifestyles. This does not mean something is wrong with them. It simply means they are in an environment where compatibility is low. Similarly, two people who might be perfectly compatible may never meet if their paths do not cross due to differences in social circles or daily routines. Manson emphasizes that improving your chances often requires not just self-improvement, but also placing yourself in better environments where your values and interests naturally align with others. Consider a real-life scenario. A person who wants to improve their dating life but spends most of their time at home, rarely socializing, and avoiding new environments. Even if they develop strong confidence and communication skills, their opportunities remain limited. Now imagine that same person begins attending hobby groups, fitness classes, community events, or online communities aligned with their interests. Suddenly, they are exposed to new people who share similar values, increasing the likelihood of meaningful connections. The change is not in personality alone, but in exposure. Manson also challenges a belief that success in relationships is purely about personal improvement. While self-growth is important, he argues that ignoring environmental factors leads to frustration. People often think, something is wrong with me, when in reality the issue might be, I am in the wrong place. This perspective encourages a more strategic and less self-critical approach to dating and relationships. As you reflect on this chapter, ask yourself, am I putting myself in environments where meaningful connections are actually possible? Are my daily routines limiting the types of people I meet? Do I focus too much on self-improvement while ignoring opportunities to expand my social world? What changes in my environment could significantly increase my chances of meeting compatible people? These questions help shift attention from self-blame to practical action. Main points. The key idea of this chapter is that attraction is influenced not only by personality and behavior, but also by environment, timing, and social exposure. Being in the right place increases the likelihood of meeting compatible people, while being in the wrong environment can limit opportunities regardless of personal qualities. Self-improvement alone is not enough. Exposure to the right demographics is equally important. A practical lesson you can apply immediately is to evaluate your current environment and identify new spaces where you can meet like-minded people, such as hobby groups, social events, professional networks, or online communities. Ask yourself, am I limiting my chances by staying in the same environment every day? The more intentionally you place yourself in the right social settings, the more natural and meaningful your opportunities for connection will become. Chapter 9, How to Be Attractive, brings together everything discussed so far and turns it into a practical approach to becoming someone who naturally draws others in, not through tricks or manipulation, but through identity, behavior, and lifestyle. Mark Manson explains that attraction is not a performance you switch on when you meet someone. It is a reflection of how you live your life when no one is watching. In other words, attractiveness is not something you act out, it is something you build. Imagine two people walking into the same room. One is trying hard to appear interesting, constantly thinking about what to say next, hoping others will notice them. The other is engaged in conversation, relaxed in their presence, and genuinely interested in people without needing to impress anyone. The second person often stands out not because they are trying to be attractive, but because they are comfortable being themselves. Manson argues that this natural ease comes from having a life that feels meaningful on its own. When someone has goals they care about, hobbies they enjoy, and personal direction, they stop relying on social validation to feel complete. That independence becomes attractive in itself. The chapter also emphasizes that many people make the mistake of focusing too much on techniques, pick-up strategies, or scripted behavior, believing there is a formula to attraction. But real-life experience shows otherwise. For example, consider someone who memorizes clever lines to impress others at social events. They may occasionally get attention, but the interactions often feel forced and artificial. Now compare that with someone who simply lives an interesting life, develops skills, pursues passions, and interact with others naturally. Their conversations feel effortless because they are not performing. They are sharing who they already are. People are drawn to that authenticity because it signals depth and stability. Manson explains that becoming attractive is less about changing how others see you and more about changing how you see yourself. When you respect your own life, your choices, and your direction, it naturally influences how others perceive you. Think of someone who is deeply invested in improving their fitness, learning new skills, or building creative project. Even if they are not conventionally the most confident person in the room, their sense of purpose makes them more compelling. Attraction grows when there is something meaningful behind your presence. The chapter also highlights the importance of emotional independence. People who depend heavily on external validation often come across as anxious or uncertain, even if they try to hide it. On the other hand, people who are comfortable with themselves, who are not constantly seeking approval, naturally project calmness. For instance, in a social setting, someone who can enjoy the moment without worrying about whether they are being liked often appears more attractive simply because they are not dependent on approval to feel okay. As you reflect on this chapter, ask yourself, what does my current life say about me when I am not trying to impress anyone? Am I building a life that feels meaningful to me, or am I focusing only on how I appear to others? Do I rely too much on external validation to feel confident? What activities, goals, or habits could make my life more fulfilling regardless of how others perceive it? These questions help shift attention from external approval to internal development. Main points. The central idea of this chapter is that true attractiveness comes from building a meaningful, self-directed life rather than relying on techniques or performance. People are drawn to those who are confident in who they are, emotionally independent, and engaged in purposeful living. Authenticity and self-respect naturally create stronger attraction than any scripted behavior. A practical lesson you can apply immediately is to focus on improving your own life in ways that matter to you, such as developing skills, pursuing meaningful goals, or building healthy habits, instead of trying to control how others perceive you. Ask yourself, if no one was watching, would I still be proud of the life I am building? The more your answer aligns with purpose and self-respect, the more naturally attractive you become to others. Chapter 10, What Are Your Stories? Dives into one of the most subtle yet powerful forces shaping how people behave in relationships, the personal narratives they tell themselves about who they are and what they are capable of. Mark Manson explains that every individual carries internal stories about themselves, such as, I am not attractive enough, I always get rejected, or I am not interesting to others. These stories are not objective truths, but repeated beliefs that quietly shape behavior, confidence, and outcomes. Over time, people stop questioning these stories and start living as if they are facts. Imagine someone who believes they are socially awkward. Because of this belief, they avoid conversations, hesitate to speak in groups, and interpret neutral reactions as rejection. As a result, they rarely gain positive social experiences that could disprove their story, which reinforces a belief even further. Now imagine another person with similar starting skills but a different internal narrative, such as, I can improve my social skills with practice. This person is more likely to engage in conversations, make mistakes, learn from them, and gradually build confidence. The difference is not talent, but the story they believe about themselves. Manson argues that many problems in dating and attraction are not caused by reality, but by interpretation. For example, someone might interpret a single rejection as proof that they are unattractive or unworthy. Another person might interpret the same rejection as simply a mismatch or timing issue. The external event is identical, but the internal story changes the emotional impact completely. These stories act like filters through which people see the world, shaping everything from confidence to behavior to emotional resilience. The chapter also emphasizes that stories can become self-fulfilling prophecies. If someone believes they are bad at relationships, they may behave in ways that confirm that belief, such as avoiding vulnerability, overthinking interactions, or seeking excessive validation. On the other hand, someone who believes they are capable of improving relationships will take action, learn from mistakes, and gradually build better experiences. Consider a person learning to speak in public. If their story is, I am terrible at speaking, they may avoid every opportunity, which keeps them inexperienced. If their story changes to, I am learning to speak better each time, they begin to grow through practice. Manson encourages readers to question these internal narratives, instead of accepting them blindly. Many of these stories were formed during past experiences, childhood moments, or social comparisons, but they may no longer reflect reality. The key is not to instantly eliminate negative thoughts, but to recognize them as stories rather than truths. Once you see them as stories, you gain the ability to rewrite them through action and experience. As you reflect on this chapter, ask yourself, what stories do I tell myself about my attractiveness, confidence, or social ability? Where did these stories come from, and are they still accurate? How do these beliefs influence my behavior in relationships and social situations? What would change if I stopped treating these thoughts as facts and started viewing them as assumptions? These questions help uncover the hidden narratives that may be limiting growth. Main points. The core lesson of this chapter is that people are guided not just by reality, but by the internal stories they believe about themselves. These stories shape confidence, behavior, and outcomes, often in ways that become self-fulfilling. Negative narratives can limit growth, while empowering narratives encourage action and improvement. A practical lesson you can apply immediately is to identify one limiting belief you have about yourself and challenge it by taking a small action that contradicts it. Ask yourself, is this belief a fact or just a story I have been repeating? The more you question and rewrite these internal narratives through real experience, the more your confidence and life outcomes will begin to change. Chapter 11, How to Overcome Anxiety, explores one of the biggest hidden barriers in attraction and personal growth: the internal tension people feel before taking action, especially in social or romantic situations. Mark Manson explains that anxiety is not something that disappears before you act. Instead, it is something you learn to carry while still moving forward. Most people mistakenly believe they need to feel calm, confident, or ready before they approach someone, speak up, or take a risk, but this waiting game often leads to avoidance and stagnation. In reality, anxiety is simply the mind's response to uncertainty, and uncertainty is unavoidable in anything meaningful. Imagine someone who wants to talk to a person they find interesting in a social setting. Their mind starts racing with thoughts like, what if I say something wrong? What if I get rejected? What if I embarrass myself? Because of this anxiety, they step back, stay silent, and later regret not taking the chance. Now imagine another person in the same situation who feels the same nervousness but chooses to act anyway. They walk over, start a simple conversation, and accept that the outcome is uncertain. The interaction may not always go perfectly, but each attempt reduces fear over time and builds emotional resilience. Manson emphasizes that anxiety does not decrease by avoiding action. It decreases through repeated exposure to the very situations that trigger it. The chapter also highlights that anxiety is often fueled by imagined outcomes rather than real events. People tend to overestimate how badly things could go and underestimate their ability to handle those outcomes. For example, someone might believe that if a conversation goes awkwardly, it will be a disaster that defines them socially. In reality, most awkward moments are quickly forgotten by others, while the person experiencing anxiety tends to magnify them internally. This mismatch between perception and reality is what gives anxiety its power. Manson explains that trying to eliminate anxiety before acting creates a cycle of fear and avoidance. The more you avoid uncomfortable situations, the more sensitive you become to them. On the other hand, when you face them directly, even in small steps, your tolerance of discomfort increases. Think about someone learning to swim. At first, the water feels intimidating and unpredictable, but with gradual exposure, their body adapts, and what once felt overwhelming becomes normal. Social anxiety works in a similar way. Repeated exposure to conversations, rejection, and uncertainty slowly rewires how the brain responds to these situations. The chapter also introduces a key mindset shift. Success is not the absence of anxiety, but the ability to act despite it. People who appear socially confident are not necessarily free from fear. They are simply more willing to move forward while feeling it. This reframing helps reduce pressure because it removes the unrealistic expectation of feeling perfectly comfortable before taking action. Instead, discomfort becomes part of the process rather than a signal to stop. As you reflect on this chapter, ask yourself, in what situations do I avoid action because of anxiety rather than actual danger? How often do I overestimate negative outcomes in my mind? What opportunities have I missed because I waited to feel ready? How would my life change if I accepted anxiety as part of growth instead of a reason to stop? These questions help separate imagined fear from real limitations. Main points. The central lesson of this chapter is that anxiety is a normal response to uncertainty and does not need to disappear before taking action. Avoidance strengthens anxiety, while gradual exposure weakens it over time. Most fears are exaggerated in the mind and are far less severe in reality. Real confidence comes from acting despite anxiety, not from waiting for it to vanish. A practical lesson you can apply immediately is to choose one small situation that makes you slightly uncomfortable and take action toward it instead of avoiding it. Ask yourself, what is one thing I'm avoiding simply because it feels uncomfortable? The more you practice acting through anxiety rather than around it, the more control you gain over your emotions and experiences. Chapter 12. Your intentions focuses on one of the most overlooked but decisive elements in attraction and relationships, the clarity behind why you approach, talk, or connect with someone in the first place. Mark Manson explains that people often underestimate how strongly intentions shape perception. Even before words matter, people can sense whether someone is being honest, seeking genuine connection, or trying to manipulate an outcome. In many cases, attraction is less about what you say and more about what your behavior quietly communicates about your intent. Imagine two people starting a conversation with the same line. One is simply curious, relaxed, and genuinely interested in getting to know the other person. The conversation feels natural, with no pressure or hidden agenda. The other person, however, is internally focused on trying to impress, win approval, or secure a phone number. Even if they say all the right things, the interaction feels slightly tense or forced because the underlying intention is need-based rather than connection-based. Manson argues that people are highly sensitive to this difference, even if they cannot always articulate it consciously. The chapter highlights how unclear intentions often lead to confusion and emotional frustration in relationships. For example, someone may enter a situation pretending they are just having fun, while secretly hoping for a serious relationship. As time passes, expectations clash because the intention was never honest from the beginning. The result is disappointment on both sides. On the other hand, when someone is clear about what they want, whether it is friendship, dating, or something long-term, it creates clarity and filters out incompatible matches early. This reduces emotional confusion and wasted effort. Manson also emphasizes that intentions are deeply connected to neediness. When someone's intention is driven by fear of being alone, fear of rejection, or desire for validation, their behavior tends to become reactive. They may over-message, overthink responses, or adjust their personality to keep the other person interested. In contrast, when intention comes from self-respect and genuine curiosity, the interaction becomes more balanced. For example, someone who enters a social situation thinking, "I want to see if I connect with this person," behaves very differently from someone thinking, "I need this person to like me." The chapter also suggests that clarity of intention improves not only attraction but also self-respect. When you are honest with yourself about what you want, you stop engaging in situations that contradict your values. Consider someone who realizes they want meaningful connection but keeps entering shallow interactions just to avoid loneliness. Once they become aware of their true intention, they can begin making more aligned choices that reflect what they genuinely value, even if it means saying no to certain situations. As you reflect on this chapter, ask yourself, what do I truly want when I approach someone or enter a relationship? Am I honest with others about my intentions, or do I hide them to avoid discomfort or rejection? How often do I act from fear rather than clarity? What patterns in my relationships would change if I communicated my intentions more openly and consistently? These questions help uncover the gap between what you want and what you actually express. Main points. The core lesson of this chapter is that clear and honest intentions are essential for healthy attraction and meaningful relationships. People are highly sensitive to whether your actions come from genuine interest or from neediness and validation seeking. Unclear intentions create confusion and emotional conflict, while clear intentions create alignment and clarity. A practical lesson you can apply immediately is to pause and identify your true intention before entering conversations or relationships, and to express it more honestly instead of hiding it out of fear. Ask yourself, am I acting from a place of self-respect and genuine curiosity, or from a need for approval? The more aligned your intentions become with your true values, the more natural and stable your connections will be. Chapter 13, How to be Charming, shifts the focus from abstract ideas about attraction to the practical, everyday behaviors that make someone enjoyable to be around. Mark Manson explains that charm is not about clever tricks, scripted lines, or trying to impress others with false charisma. Instead, it comes from presence, emotional awareness, and the ability to make others feel comfortable, seen, and valued in your company. In simple terms, charm is less about performing and more about how you make people feel when they interact with you. Imagine two people in a conversation at a social gathering. One is constantly thinking about what to say next, trying to appear interesting, occasionally interrupting or steering the conversation back to themselves. The other listens attentively, responds naturally, and shows genuine curiosity about what the other person is saying. The second person often leaves a stronger impression, not because they spoke more, but because they made the other person feel heard and understood. Manson emphasizes that charm often emerges in these small moments of attention and emotional presence rather than in dramatic gestures or rehearsed behavior. The chapter also highlights that many people misunderstand charm as being entertaining or funny all the time. While humor can help, true charm is more about emotional safety. For example, think of someone who listens without judgment when you share something personal. Even if they do not say anything particularly clever, their calm and accepting presence makes the interaction memorable. On the other hand, someone who constantly tries to impress with jokes or stories but rarely listens can feel exhausting to be around. Charm, therefore, is deeply connected to how well you balance expression with attention to others. Manson explains that one of the key components of charm is being fully present. Many people are physically in conversations but mentally distracted, thinking about how they are being perceived or what they should say next. This creates disconnection. A charming person, however, is engaged in the moment. They notice details, respond naturally, and do not treat conversations as performances. For instance, someone who remembers small details about a previous conversation and brings them up later shows attentiveness, which naturally builds warmth and connection. The chapter also points out that charm is closely tied to emotional stability. People are naturally drawn to those who are not reactive, anxious, or overly self-focused. For example, in a stressful situation like a misunderstanding or disagreement, a charming person does not escalate tension, but instead remains calm, listens, and responds thoughtfully. This emotional steadiness creates trust and makes others feel safe in their presence. As you reflect on this chapter, ask yourself, in conversations, do I focus more on how I'm being perceived or on the person I'm speaking to? Do I listen to understand, or do I listen just to reply? How often do I bring my full attention into interactions instead of being distracted or self-conscious? What would change in my relationships if I made others feel more heard and valued? These questions help reveal whether your current communication style builds connection or distance. Main points. The central lesson of this chapter is that charm is not about performance, but about presence, attention, and emotional awareness. People are naturally drawn to those who make them feel heard, respected, and comfortable. Trying too hard to impress often reduces charm, while genuine curiosity and listening increase it. Emotional stability and attentiveness are key traits that create lasting positive impressions. A practical lesson you can apply immediately is to focus less on what you will say next and more on fully listening to the person in front of you, noticing details, and responding with genuine interest. Ask yourself, am I truly present in my conversations, or am I just waiting for my turn to speak? The more present you become, the more naturally charming you will appear. Chapter 14. The dating process breaks down the often confusing and emotionally charged experience of dating into something more structured, realistic, and less overwhelming. Mark Manson explains that many people approach dating with unrealistic expectations, believing it should feel effortless, instantly meaningful, or guided by clear signs of success and failure. In reality, dating is a process of exploration, filtering, and learning, where both people are trying to understand compatibility over time rather than immediately finding the one. Imagine someone going on a first date, expecting to instantly know whether the other person is perfect for them. Every pause in conversation feels like a red flag, every awkward moment feels like failure, and the entire experience becomes stressful. Now compare that with someone who views the same date as a simple opportunity to get to know another human being. They are not trying to decide the entire future in one sitting. Instead, they are observing compatibility, communication style, values, and comfort level. The second approach feels lighter, more natural, and often leads to better connections because there is less pressure and more authenticity. Manson emphasizes that dating is not about winning or impressing, but about filtering. Each interaction provides information about whether two people align in terms of personality, goals, emotional needs, and lifestyle. For example, someone might initially feel excited about a person's energy and confidence, but over a few conversations realize their values or long-term goals are very different. Instead of seeing this as failure, the book suggests viewing it as successful filtering that prevents deeper incompatibility later. This perspective reduces emotional attachment to early outcomes and encourages clarity instead of confusion. The chapter also addresses common mistakes people make, such as overinvesting too quickly or treating early attention as guaranteed success. For instance, someone might meet a person they like and immediately start texting constantly, planning future scenarios, or emotionally committing before any real foundation exists. When the other person does not respond with the same intensity, disappointment follows. Manson explains that healthy dating requires pacing, patience, and emotional balance. Each stage should be allowed to develop naturally without forcing certainty too early. Another important idea is that dating is not a linear path but a series of experiments. Not every interaction will lead to a relationship, and that is not a problem. In fact, most will not. The goal is not to force every connection into success, but to recognize patterns, improve communication, and refine understanding of what truly works for you. Think of someone trying different restaurants to discover what kind of food they actually enjoy. Each experience provides useful feedback, even if it does not become a regular choice. As you reflect on this chapter, ask yourself, do I treat dating as a high-pressure test or as a process of learning and exploration? How often do I overinvest emotionally too early in a connection? Am I able to let things unfold naturally without forcing outcomes? What patterns have I noticed in my past relationships that could help me make better choices in the future? These questions help shift dating from anxiety-driven behavior to a more grounded and self-aware process. Main points. The key lesson of this chapter is that dating is a process of exploration and filtering, not a performance or immediate evaluation of success. Each interaction provides information about compatibility, and not every connection is meant to last. Overinvesting too early or expecting instant certainty creates unnecessary stress and disappointment. Healthy dating requires patience, pacing, and emotional balance. A practical lesson you can apply immediately is to approach each interaction with curiosity instead of pressure, focusing on learning about the other person rather than trying to secure an outcome. Ask yourself, am I trying to force a result, or am I allowing the connection to reveal itself naturally? The more you embrace dating as a process, the more clarity and confidence you develop in your relationships. Chapter 15, Physicality and Sex, explores one of the most misunderstood aspects of attraction by shifting the focus away from performance, technique, or pressure and toward natural human connection, boundaries, and emotional clarity. Mark Manson explains that physical intimacy is not something that should be treated as a goal to chase or a milestone to achieve, but rather as a natural extension of comfort, trust, and mutual interest that develops over time. When people approach physicality with anxiety, expectation, or hidden agendas, it creates tension that disrupts genuine connection. But when it is approached with honesty, respect, and emotional stability, it becomes a reflection of deeper compatibility rather than a forced outcome. Imagine two people spending time together after forming a connection. In one scenario, one person is constantly thinking about whether the interaction will lead to physical intimacy, analyzing every moment, and subtly trying to steer things in a certain direction. This creates pressure, even if nothing is openly said. The other person, however, is simply present, enjoying the interaction, and focusing on understanding the other person rather than trying to reach a specific outcome. The second scenario often feels more comfortable and natural because there is no hidden urgency driving the behavior. Manson emphasizes that pressure is one of the biggest destroyers of genuine attraction, especially when it replaces curiosity and emotional presence. The chapter also highlights the importance of boundaries and respect in physical relationships. Attraction does not exist in isolation from emotional safety. For example, someone who ignores signals, rushes emotional or physical steps, or prioritizes their own desires without considering the other person often damages trust, even if initial attraction was present. On the other hand, someone who pays attention to comfort levels, communicates clearly, and respects boundaries creates a sense of safety that strengthens attraction over time. Physical connection, in this sense, becomes meaningful not because it happens quickly, but because it develops naturally within mutual understanding. Manson also challenges the idea that physical success defines personal worth. Many people attach self-esteem to sexual validation, believing that their value is determined by how quickly or how often they experience physical intimacy. This creates insecurity and desperation, which ironically reduces attractiveness. Consider someone who goes into social situations with a mindset that they need validation to feel worthy. Their behavior often becomes anxious, overly focused, or approval-seeking. In contrast, someone who already feels secure in themselves, regardless of external outcomes, tends to appear more relaxed and confident, which naturally improves connection. The chapter further explains that true intimacy is built on emotional alignment, not just physical interaction. Physicality without emotional connection often feels empty or short-lived, while emotional connection without pressure allows physical intimacy to develop in a way that feels natural and respectful. Think of a relationship where two people take time to understand each other's values, communication style, and emotional needs. When physical connection eventually happens in such a context, it tends to feel more meaningful because it is supported by trust rather than urgency. As you reflect on this chapter, ask yourself, do I associate my value with physical or romantic validation? Do I create pressure in interactions by focusing too much on outcomes instead of connection? Am I respectful and aware of the other person's comfort level in close interactions? How would my relationships change if I prioritize emotional presence over expectation? These questions help uncover whether your approach to intimacy is driven by insecurity or genuine connection. Main points. The central lesson of this chapter is that physicality and sex are not achievements to be pursued, but natural extensions of emotional comfort, respect, and mutual interest. Pressure, neediness, and outcome-based thinking reduce attraction, while presence, patience, and emotional stability increase it. True intimacy is built on trust, boundaries, and compatibility rather than urgency or validation-seeking behavior. A practical lesson you can apply immediately is to shift your focus from outcomes to connection by being more present, respecting boundaries, and removing pressure from interactions. Ask yourself, am I trying to achieve something, or am I genuinely connecting with another person? The more you prioritize emotional safety and authenticity, the more meaningful and natural your relationships become. The conclusion, moving ahead, brings the entire philosophy of models together into one clear message. Attraction, confidence, and relationships are not about chasing techniques or external validation, but about building a life rooted in honesty, self-respect, and emotional independence. Mark Manson emphasizes that real transformation does not come from memorizing ideas, but from consistently applying them in everyday life until they become part of who you are. The journey is not about becoming someone who is universally liked, but about becoming someone who is deeply aligned with themselves, even if that means not being accepted by everyone. Imagine someone who has spent years trying to improve their dating life by reading advice, watching videos, and analyzing every interaction, yet still feels stuck. The turning point does not come from learning something new, but from finally acting differently. They begin expressing themselves honestly, taking social risks, accepting rejection without overthinking it, and focusing on building a meaningful life outside of dating. Slowly, their interactions change not because they are following a system, but because their mindset has shifted. Conversations feel lighter, relationships feel more natural, and attraction begins to develop as a byproduct of who they are becoming. Manson explains that the biggest obstacle is not lack of knowledge, but hesitation to act. Many people understand the principles intellectually but fail to apply them consistently because change feels uncomfortable. For example, someone may agree that honesty is important, but still avoid expressing their true feelings in real situations because they fear rejection. Or they may understand that confidence comes from action, yet continue waiting for the perfect moment before taking social risks. The conclusion reminds readers that transformation only happens when ideas are tested in reality, not when they are merely understood. The chapter also reinforces the idea that setbacks, failures, and awkward experiences are not signs of failure but essential parts of growth. A person learning any skill, whether it is social confidence, communication, or emotional stability, improves through repetition and exposure, not perfection. Think of someone learning to play a musical instrument. At first, mistakes are frequent and progress feels slow, but over time, consistency turns discomfort into competence. The same applies to building relationships and confidence. Every interaction becomes a learning experience that gradually shapes a more grounded and authentic version of yourself. Manson closes with the idea that the goal is not to become a perfect version of yourself, but a more honest one. The pursuit of perfection often leads to anxiety and self-doubt, while the pursuit of authenticity leads to freedom. When you stop trying to control how others perceive you and instead focus on expressing who you truly are, life becomes less about performance and more about experience. Attraction, in this sense, is no longer something to chase but something that naturally emerges from a well-lived life. As you reflect on this conclusion, ask yourself, am I applying what I learn in real situations, or am I only consuming information without action? What would change in my life if I stopped waiting to feel ready and started acting with what I already know? Am I focused on being liked by everyone, or on being true to myself? What small action can I take today that reflects honesty, courage, or self-respect? These questions are meant to bridge the gap between understanding and living the ideas. Main points. The core message of the conclusion is that real change comes from action, not knowledge alone. Attraction and confidence are byproduct of a life built on honesty, emotional independence, and consistent practice of uncomfortable but meaningful actions. Setbacks and failures are part of growth, not signs of inadequacy. The goal is authenticity, not perfection. A practical lesson you can apply immediately is to choose one principle from the book and actively practice it in a real situation today. Whether that means being more honest, taking a social risk, or expressing yourself without overthinking. Ask yourself, am I living these ideas, or just learning them? The more you act on what you understand, the more naturally your confidence, clarity, and relationships will transform. And that brings us to the end of this audiobook summary of models, Attract Women Through Honesty by Mark Manson. Throughout this journey, we learned that real attraction is not about tricks, appearance, or trying to impress others, but about confidence built through action, honesty in expressing who you truly are, and emotional independence from external validation. We explored how vulnerability creates deeper connections, how rejection is not failure but feedback, how your environment shapes your opportunities, and how your internal stories, intentions, and mindset directly influence your relationships and confidence. If there is one thing to take away, it is this. When you stop chasing approval and start living with authenticity, everything else begins to align naturally. If you found value in this video, consider liking it, subscribing to Visual Books for more audiobook summaries, and sharing it with someone who needs this perspective. And don't forget to drop your thoughts in the comments. What lesson impacted you the most from this book?